Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Afternoon Tune. I'm your host, Josh, and I got some special guests with me today. I got the great artist from Chicago right here, Nico. Right here, he's got a great project out that I wanted to have him come on and talk about. He's the one that did the outro music for our show. He messed with us for the free, so that's always great. Loved it like that, so that was amazing. And I know him, Nico, through another person, Yosin. Know him through there. So Yosin been a frequent collaborator on the show, frequent person on the show as well. Come on, usually having discussions about UFC, MMA, things like that. So it's good to have both of you on the show.
Thank
Yeah,
you for
thanks
having
for
me.
having. For real, man. And thanks. Much appreciated.
Yeah,
It's good to finally make it,
yeah, yeah. Good.
you know?
Yeah, I'm glad you're finally here. Glad you could finally be here. And your project. How long has your project been out now?
So my project's actually been out since November, and the reason for that is because the songs are actually really old. Like those songs are mostly from 2017 and 2018. Um, and they were pretty deep for me, you know. They were like some very important things. But I kept getting in all these like situations where I kept like hesitating to drop them and doing all this stuff. So I actually what I did was the day I uploaded them was the anniversary of my grandmother's passing. And I kind of just wanted to do it. I didn't make a big deal of it or whatever, and I didn't plan like a release or anything because I was just coming back from Los Angeles, like back to Chicago for like, I'd been gone pretty much all last year, but I was like, you know what, like I at least want when people go to like check out my page or whatever, like I just want them to like see, you know what I mean? Like some music that I feel like I could just really stand by. And even though I didn't really have like a big um I didn't really have like a rollout plan for it because like I said, the songs are old, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's been since like November that it's been up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been kind of crazy to see like even like some of the responses that I've gotten from people are like really like personal. Um, and I've gotten like people really appreciate some of the stuff I did on there. So that's kind of like a crazy thing to see because I didn't really, you know,
And the name of your project is Before I Knew It. Is the name of it.
before I knew it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seven track album. It's pretty nice. So I'm just gonna ask like some generic questions, probably basic, kind of questions, kind of get kind of warmed
For
up for.
sure.
So just a little bit
Okay.
about your background and how you started in music and everything like that.
Okay, for sure. So I started my first experience with music was I was 7 years old and I started taking like piano lessons, but they didn't stick for super long. Um, but when I was like 10 or 11, I started picking up the guitar. And I was self-taught. So I started playing guitar. I played for about 4 years, and then around the time I was like 14 years old, I started picking up drums. And I would just like I would sneak into like the band room at my school every day after school and just play until they kicked me out. And then my grandparents got me a drum set, I think between my sophomore and junior years of high school. So drums became my main thing, but then like senior year, um, a friend of mine told me about this program called Ableton, which is music production software that's a lot more popular now than it was when I first started using it. But that's how I kind of like started like making beats. And I remember he had this beat pad that I would make beats on because you could make like 200, and I filled it up with probably like a couple hundred beats. But then I was like I wanted to move on and start using the computer. And I did that for a few years, and then I started singing and like writing songs probably around like 2015 and 16. Or I just like come up with like these little like hook ideas and melodies, and then started getting like a little bit more comfortable with my voice, and then it kind of just progressed from there, like um, yeah. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at now. It's like I'm singing a lot more. I'm writing songs a lot more. I still make beats. That's like become kind of like the easiest part of the whole thing. Um, but yeah, I mean, I've been a musician my whole life. That's like, I guess the short answer is it's been about like, I just turned 27, so it's been about like 20 years of me kind of like
Oh.
messing around with the
Mhm.
the instruments, the music, and everything. It's just like it's always been a part of my life. You know what I mean?
Mm. Yeah. Um, so how many instruments do you know how to play?
I can play. So I play piano, drums, and guitar.
Okay.
I don't know if you consider making beats an instrument. I play the laptop, right? If that counts, I play the laptop. Um, but yeah, just like those, pretty much. I can kind of play bass a little bit, just but that's really just because it's pretty similar to the guitar. Um, and yeah, I've always wanted to learn the saxophone though. Like I don't know how to play any. I played recorder. Like, did you guys play recorder when you were in school?
Hell
Yes.
yeah.
They give you those? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So we all did.
Yeah.
So I never learned how to play anything else that was like one of those like woodwind instruments
Okay.
or brass whatsoever. I really only kind of picked up like those like main three. But I've always wanted to learn how to play the saxophone. Not always actually, but like it's been a long time now. That I've wanted to learn how to play the saxophone. I just haven't like I haven't really put that much effort into like going out of my way to make it happen
Hmm.
yet.
Okay. So coming up, so was your family like a big musical family? You know, since they did get you like the drums and everything like that, like were they also into music, or was it just mainly like a youth thing there?
So the way it was that my my grandfather and my uncle were both singers. Um, they would sing like my grandfather sang in church, in his church, and I used to go to church with him all the time when I was growing up, like really like twice a week, almost like every week I would go to church with my grandfather. And he was like the leader of like the church like choir. Um, and he would sing a lot, but like for some reason I never like got into like singing as like a thing. Like I enjoyed, you know, singing in general because I was in choir actually when I was in like sixth grade and well, in like most like middle school. Um, but I'm trying to think. Oh, we're talking about my family. So I had some music on my mom's side. That's like my mom's side of the family. But my dad's side, my dad was a drummer. And a lot of his family is very musical as well. Like my uncle on his side, his name is like Ray Camacho, and he's like a Mexican trumpeter who actually had like a ton of like success in sort of like the Latin American um, music industry, like throughout I think like the 70s and 80s. Um, and a lot of my dad's like other kids are also like kind of naturally like musically inclined, like these like good with instruments and playing and stuff like that. So I do have, yeah, I have some on both sides. But it was never one of those things growing up where it was like I had to like kind of earn the right to have it be looked at as like a viable option for like, you know what I mean, like a path, you
Mm.
know, like like something like alternative to like the whole college kind of like, you know what I mean, standard, you know, 4 years degree job, you know what I mean, before it was like, oh,
So
um
did you didn't have any interest of like going to college, going to like majoring in music or anything like that in college, or you didn't have any interest in doing that?
not really, just because, you know, I was interested in taking in doing like drum performance, but it just wasn't something that I could really do. It wasn't something that at the time that my mom was supportive of, and it was kind of that was hard for me to like accept. So it was just like I figured like with the music thing, and I just started making beats. I was like, I can probably I'm just gonna try and get as good at making beats as possible because I could see that like it's the world of music started to open up to me more, like being able to see the world of music beyond just like playing an instrument or being in a band or you know what I mean, anything like that. But being able to see like this sort of broader world of like commercial music where there's like, producers and production is like such a huge sort of like part of everything that it's like, if you get really good at this, you could probably actually make, you know, some real strides in terms of like being able to do like whatever you want to do with your life when it comes to music. But it never, for some reason, I was not ever really big on being instructed. You know what I mean? I was never really big on like having like teachers or, anything like that. Like I taught myself how to play the guitar. I taught myself how to play the drums. I taught myself how to make beats. Um, and I've been teaching myself how to sing. I've been teaching myself how to, but everything at the end of the day is like, you're kind of like, or I'll at least speak for myself, like, I, it's easy to get pushed, right? By like, there's a lot of great music out there. You know what I mean? There's so much like really like great music. There are great musicians, like these like world-class talents that are just like, they'll inspire you to just like sort of like learn, you know what I mean? You kind of just learn from the things that kind of become your favorite pieces of music. Um, so I was like, I would learn how to like play my favorite songs on the guitar. You know what I mean? I didn't know how to write stuff on the guitar yet, but I would just like learn how to like play, whatever like my favorite songs were at the time. And that was like a big part of the learning process. But in terms of like going to take classes or anything like that, the most class I really ever took for anything was like YouTube tutorials, like that was pretty much as far as like the like sort of instruction portion of my like musical journey kind of went.
Yeah. So do you know how to read music or?
Not really. Like sheet music?
Yeah.
Not really. I can't like if I look at it long enough, I'll be like, I think I know what I'm looking at. But it's not like something that I have like practiced like whatsoever. Like I learned how to do it in I think maybe like middle school when we were taking like when I was in choir in middle school, I think we learned a little bit about like reading music and reading staff their sheet music and all the notes. And I think I'd like like they give you like the acronyms, what is it? Like face. It's like face is like the spaces and then
Right.
every good every good boy does fine. Or something like it. I really can't read music that well. I remember like some of the basics, but I can't like I like watch like this have you ever seen the Quincy Jones documentary on Netflix?
I don't believe I have. No, I don't think so.
No.
You got to check it out. You got to check it out. But you'll definitely see like, there'll be like shots of him in the studio like when they're working on like um when they're working on like Thriller, even like before that when Quincy started like doing like his film scores where he could just like he could play something and then he could like go write it in a notebook like you know what I mean like he's writing like sentences. You know what I mean? Like he could just write the notes, like the
Yeah.
chords and the everything, the melodies, everything. I'm like that's great. Like I can't do that, but I
Yeah,
think it'd
that's
be cool.
sick.
I don't know. I mean, it's weird because I don't know if you'd like now with the way the technology is, it's almost like you don't really need to. Like I know music well enough to be like, everything on a like I don't know if you have you ever like used like like not Pro Tools but like Fruity Loops or Logic or anything like that? Like have you ever used any type of like music production software?
No, I mean the only kind of software I use is just for like editing stuff, like Adobe Premiere Pro
Okay.
and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the way it is, it's like everything on a on these sort of like digital, they're called DAWs, right? A digital audio workstation. It's like everything's formatted like a piano. You know what I mean? So instead of it being formatted like sheet music, it's just formatted how like, the keys of a piano are formatted. And so I know how to play piano. So I know like what I'm doing in terms of like that, but to translate stuff to like sheet music, I don't know how long it would take. I probably have to just hire somebody to do it, or there's probably like another software that you could
Probably.
just,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Just like put that stuff through and it'll do it automatically.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, put
But
it through the software and it'll print out there.
yeah.
So when you said you were playing songs, with the guitar, what were kind of the early songs you were playing on the guitar or the piano to learn how to to learn how to use those instruments?
So I think first the first song that I learned how to play on the guitar was I'll Follow You Into the Dark by Death Cab for Cutie, which I don't know if either of you guys know this song, but it's like this like acoustic like indie emo song. It's really good though. But I remember that was like the first song that I learned how to play. And then I kind of like just progressed. I would learn how to play like a couple Led Zeppelin songs, like Stairway to Heaven. Like I'm pretty sure everybody that picks up a guitar at some point learns how to play Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Um, uh, some like Led Zeppelin songs, and there was this group I really liked called. It wasn't even really a group. It was like one guy with a guitar. Well, I might be wrong. It might be a second person that's part of it. But the main guy, his name was Sam Beam, and the group was called Iron and Wine. And all of their music would really just be vocals and like acoustic guitar. And so I learned how to play a fair amount of his songs because I really liked. I even like to this day, he's like probably one of my favorite songwriters and composers. Like his music is just very like it's really sad, but it's really good. Um, and then after that, I learned when I kind of like leveled up on guitar, I learned how to play the song Little Wing by Jimi Hendrix. Not the entire thing, but like a good portion of it. And I remember that being like, damn, like I'm getting kind of good at this, which was like right when I like stopped and then I like just picked up like playing the drums. And drums I would play like everything. Like whatever music I was listening to, I would play it on the drums. It didn't matter. So it'd be like I would be playing like I was listening to like a lot of like screamo and like metal, but I was also learning how to play the drums. So like, like all like Kanye West songs and like Drake's shit that was coming out when I was still in high school. Um,
Do you think you're
yeah,
more proficient with the drums than any other instrument?
probably not anymore. It's been a while. It's been a while since I've had a drum set. You know what I mean? I can still play, but it's been a while since I've even been able to like practice every day. And I think I think making beats is kind of what like replaced that in a way.
Hmm.
Um, because make like yeah, it's just one of those things. And like drumming is it's hard to do when you live in like a city just because it's like they're so loud. Like drums are drums are so loud. Like if you play drums like anywhere, like you can hear it for like at least like a couple hundred feet in like every direction. You know what I mean? Unless you
Right.
have like one of like the most crazy like soundproof setups. So it's like kind of one of those things when I moved out, a long time ago that I was like I kind of just stopped because I was living in apartments. You know what I mean? And I was never living in places where I could like just have a drum set and like be playing, setting it up and takes up space and everything too. So it's like one of the things I definitely want to get back into really badly though, because I used to love it a lot and I haven't done it in a while.
Hmm.
Um, I think right now though, I think piano is probably my best. Piano is where most of my writing happens. But I just picked up the guitar again recently too, and I've been kind of getting my chops back up, so that's been good. But I'd say piano's probably strongest right now.
Okay. Hey, Yos, could you move like a little bit to the left there? So some to the left, because it's like something's just blocking you on my screen. If you just want to move
Not sure.
to the left. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's
Sorry
good.
about that.
Oh yeah, that's good right there.
Okay.
Okay, good. Yeah. Okay. So you said piano, so you're really good. So you talked about your artist like being Sam Bean was a guy that was a great influence and someone that you thought was a
Yeah.
great artist. Do you have any
Mhm.
other artists? A generic question, I know, but any other kind of artists like that you kind of you think has influence on you that you look at as being kind of a big impact on your music?
I mean, yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, there are a lot of people who I think have probably shaped my musical like perception over, the course of my life. Um, I would say so I would say I would well first I'll start with like producers because I think in a lot of ways like the producers my whole life have been like the people who kind of like shaped a lot of the ways that I would like understand music and sort of like be able to like translate and like develop the ability to like know what I was doing when I was making beat, like have an idea and then have it like translate to exactly like what's coming out of the speakers. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So definitely like Kanye West, um, Pharrell, Timbaland. I mean, those are definitely like three of the big ones. But even like Dr. Dre, um, was really really big. I think like 40, everything that he's done with Drake was really big. Doc McKinney, who he did like most of like the weekend's early stuff. Um, Trying to think. And there's just like there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot. There's like too many to go through. But at least in terms of like I think those are at least some of the people who I think carved a lot of like the a lot of like the soundscapes. I think over just even just like the last like 20 years, you know what I mean? That were like really, really impactful. That like really like, they put in like some very like genre defining work.
Hmm.
There are some other like more obscure ones for sure. Like Butch Clancy was like this dude who was like he was like an EDM producer who I really liked um back in like high school. And I think it's so funny because I listened to his stuff and there was a lot of like this other kind of like EDM kind of like electronic um stuff that I was listening to that this guy stood out to me. And it was funny, I actually learned that he was a drummer who had gotten into making beats. And I was like, that's why I like his music. It's like I can tell. It's like I feel I connected with that.
Hmm.
Um, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. And there's probably, I mean, there's going to be so many. But if I think of any more and they come up in the conversation,
Okay.
um,
All right. Yeah, but I mean, you named a lot of major people. I mean, Timberland, Kanye West. I mean, for I mean, those are all legendary producers. Dr. Dre, that
yeah,
really have shaped music for the last what 40 years, 30 years, or even
yeah,
kind of
Absolutely.
for sure.
for that amount of time.
For
So
sure. Quincy Jones,
oh
obvious. I
yeah,
mean, like that's kind of well, it's like it's. I mean, the list will go on to Jermaine Dupri, Brian Michael Cox, like um, it, there's so many. Like if I name
Yeah.
them all, it's gonna just like go on, forever. But like a lot of them are producers. You know what I mean? When I think about it, it's like a lot of the people that I really think of as like people that kind of had like these like defining things that
hmm
were like very influential to me. I think a lot of them are like definitely like the producers. Rodney Jerkins, Dark Child, for sure. Um, And then bands too. The Bee Gees were really big because I really like writing love songs. I think they write some of the best love songs.
Are you a fan of Babyface?
Oh, for sure. You know
Okay.
what's funny? Okay, so I went to when I was in LA, I actually hung out with John B for a day, like at his like house, like at his recording studio. I don't know if you guys know who John B is. He's kind of a legend, but like he's pretty like low key now, but like he's like a musical genius for real. Like he writes all of his own music, he makes all of his own beats, and he's got like an amazing voice. Um, and he was kind of telling me like how when he came up, like he was kind of like Babyface was kind of like a big brother to him in a way. Like he kind of like gave him like some of like the R&B kind of like keys to, you know what I mean, like
Yeah.
making magic. And I think they just like they had like a really like cool like partnership where they like make a lot of really great music together. So I actually got more into Babyface after I met John. Um,
Mm.
and definitely I could see like the connection. But yeah, even like a lot of the guys who were kind of like building up a lot of that like early like late 90s early 2000s R&B, like even like him, like Donnell Jones too is like another guy who like produced a ton of his own music, you know, who's like just super super talented. um
And
yeah,
then
but I resonate with that a lot, you know.
yeah, and he said John B. So he did "Someone to Love," which he did with Babyface, "Pretty Girl," "Don't Say Are You Still Down," which he did with Tupac in
Hmm.
1998. "They Don't
Yeah.
Know" was also another big one, 1988.
No.
Yeah. Um, so your progression as a musician as has been coming along. Can you talk about your first like live performances that you've done, and other live performances that you've done throughout your career so far? Or
So I've only really had like I've only done like one show in the last few years, and it was for some friends of mine who were like putting some stuff on downtown. I had a release party for an EP, but I really haven't been performing too much since I've been like really focused on actually like taking my own artistry more serious and like not spending quite as much effort on like the production and writing side. Um, and I think a big part of that is partially I really want a band, but I don't have like I'm trying to figure out what to do about getting a band together. But that's like a process of like making that happen and just like kind of finding the people who I enjoy working with. And there are a lot of talented people that I know who would be great band members, but they don't live in Chicago. Um, so my thing actually recently has been I've been getting like a live set together, but it's really just been me and the guitar, you know, which is kind of like where I think kind of like the direction that I'm going, and it's also actually the direction a lot of my music has been going. Um, at least like the new stuff that I've been making has been like a lot of it has just kind of been like a lot of like acoustic guitar with like production and everything too. But um, it's been something that's had me like focused a lot more on like thinking of like, yeah, am I gonna be able like just knowing that it's like this is more geared to like actually doing it live and breaking away from being like too internet minded, which I think is something that myself and probably a lot of other artists like have been, I wouldn't say suffering from, but it's a mindset that I do see people get locked into, and that I was locked into for a long time too, where it was like, you know, I put out an EP in 2019 and we did like a big listening party and it was really dope, but it was like one of those things where I was more focused on like the dropping and like the rollout and all this stuff that it was almost to a point where it was like considering what the live performance element of it was like almost like didn't even come to mind, and which is strange because literally like I think it was like a month and a half after that the quarantine happened. So there was no, you know what I mean? There was like no performing to be talked about whatsoever. Um, but these last couple of years have definitely been really about like me trying to figure out what I want to do like differently. Cause like I don't want to do that. I think it's even like being like locked in the house. I mean, not locked fully in the house, but like kind of like being in this space of like there's like this sort of increased layer of like separation from ourselves and I think like kind of like the rest of our world and like the rest of the people. Um, I think it's like making that sort of like internet mentality a little bit stronger where it's like, you still do need to figure out like, well, you want to play to like a crowd of people, like you need to figure out how that is. And, it's just something that it's like, I'm getting this set together. So hopefully it's like my next show, like I'll have like within the next, hopefully like 2 months, month and a half. I want to stay like between like 6 and 7 weeks. But there's been people that have been hitting me up. It's just been a matter of being like, I might have to do a little bit more work in terms of like curating it myself, knowing that like I could do some of these shows, but the set that I want to do is not really the same vibe that I'm of like the shows that I'm getting invited to do. Um, so I just want to be cognizant of that, and like make sure that I'm delivering, I guess, just like the best quality performance that I possibly can, you know?
Yeah. It's interesting you bring up the pandemic, the quarantine, and Yosin, I also want you to kind of, chime in here as well. Like you both being creatives, you both being artists, um, and you speak about like that, social media maybe clogging that your mind a little bit. Can you speak to a little bit
Yeah.
about the artist experience, like what this pandemic has meant to you? Has it given you kind of more time to really create, to really explore things? And also, do you think like as an artist, is it tough sometimes to really block out the outside world? And is that a challenging part of being an artist, or?
I mean, yeah, I think it's a challenge. It's like a process. It's anything, right? Because it's like, on one hand, I am creative because I'm creative. I'm not creative because anybody wants me to be creative or because I need it to look any particular way to people. But at the same time, it is something where it's like, I really do want to deliver like a product that people really enjoy at the same time. And that does include getting it to be experienced by as many people as possible. Um, that being said, I do feel like this whole like the past 2 years, I've like really, really, really locked in. Um, and I feel like I've gotten a lot better. You know what I mean? Just at like every part of the process, like hands down, like writing, singing, um, even like production, playing instruments. Like I think it was good. I'm grateful for it in a way because it kind of just it allowed me to like get into this place where like I didn't really care so much. Like I didn't have to worry about how anything was being like received. Like I didn't have to do anything to try and like get a reaction or get attention or get any of these things because it was just like, look, like I've wanted to get better at these things for a while. You know what I mean? And there's a level of like product that I've wanted to present for a while, and I don't necessarily want to like put it off forever because it's like it's kind of like that destination versus the journey kind of thing. Like if there's always like a finish line that you're gonna wait to get to before you really start, then you'll never do it. Um, but definitely to just like put myself in a place like where I'm at now is just like knowing the type of discipline that I'd really like to be putting into each sort of part of the creative process has gone a long way. You know what I mean? It's definitely gone a long way, and it's like I don't want to. Well, I do want to bring something like new and like refreshing to the table in terms of like presenting it to the outside world. But I think I was only able to get to that place by not thinking about it. You know what I mean? By not worrying about it, by just being like, I can't even think about it right now. Like, let me just get kind of lost in the music, you know, for a little while.
Yeah.
And that was important, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yosin, you got something to add on to that?
Sure. For me, I honestly feel like quarantine was the best thing for me mentally, more than like creatively. To be honest with you, I feel like prior to quarantine, like I had a really hard time staying disciplined. Um, like there would be times and stuff where like I would expect for like for example, like when I first started out into fashion, Nico basically put the battery in my back to like go. Like this the guy right here that like created my first logo. So like I feel like prior to quarantine and stuff, like I would just kind of like waiting to like some like waiting for someone to hold my hand to like take me through something, to
Mm.
like take me through the actual process instead of like being brave enough on my own to like do my thing. And I feel like ever since quarantine and stuff, like I had a lot of time to myself, just like billions of people like around the world. And like, just like being around people who I care about, my girlfriend, family, just like stepping away from like being creative for like once. Like it just
Yeah.
gave me like a whole new perspective on just life as a whole. Um and it turned me into like kind of like a risk taker down there. Um like I remember like the early part of quarantine, 2020, of course. Uh, it was extremely difficult for me to like get up off my ass and just do what I gotta do, and I feel like like that just I had a conversation with Nico a few weeks ago about this. Like that's just what I like to say is like being a part of this cycle in like society where like people are like afraid to like really go hard for like what they really want out of life. So like within the first few months of quarantine, like I dropped my last collection, which was a collection of hoodies, and also in like customized boxes was like which was like one of my most successful drops ever. Far as like the far as it being recognizable like throughout the country. That was like one of the first times and stuff where like I had sales from like overseas, which is pretty cool. But
Yeah.
yeah, like just to answer your question and stuff, like I just feel like that quarantine was a lot better for me mentally, just as a whole, just like how I think today. Like I agree with Nico, like me, like I take my brand extremely seriously, and I feel like that was a like I feel like me taking my brand extremely seriously to the point of like me being extremely careful of like what I put out there, because like every drop that I had was better than
Hmm.
the previous drop. So like just me putting that pressure on myself, kind of like I don't know, like it just kind of like trying to think here, like with me putting that pressure on myself, just kind of made me hesitant, far as like actually
Yeah.
breaking through and stuff. So like that, like for me, that coincides with me waiting for people like either Nico or like other people who I've worked with multiple times and stuff, kind of hold my hand throughout the process. So I feel like this quarantine was extremely beneficial, and now like I'm back in go mode. Now stuff like since I grew mentally, I feel like that I can get back in that creative space, and I can think clearly now, like
Yeah.
instead of being afraid to like yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. It's very real.
And that kind of leads into my next question. I want to ask, because we're all, around the same age here. I mean, yeah, we're all,
Hmm.
kind of 20s there. So do you think that people who, are in their 20s in that stage of, you know, maybe trying to take that big risk, that big swing, and then I think Yosin, you're the one that said it that, some people are afraid to fail. Do you think a lot of that procrastination that people have in terms of chasing what they want comes from that procrastination comes from the fear of failing or the already self-doubt that there are others out there comparing yourself to other people who are around the same age as yourself who are already very successful?
100%. I just want to speak for myself here because I don't know what none of you guys went through. But like, for example, me and Josh, we went to the same high school. I feel like all that self doubt starts from high school. Like, like I feel like when you go into high school, your like main thing is to, want like you just want to be like accepted. Whether
Yeah.
if it's from the pretty girls, whether if it's from the so-called cool guys and stuff like that. So and stuff like from that moment forward, you like kind of base the like base your own personal decisions based off of pleasing other people, and I feel like that's where that seed gets planted at. Like and also with family, me growing up in a family and shit where like uh they want you to live your life the like traditional way, as far as like being safe, going to school, going to college, graduating from college,
Yeah.
working a 9 to 5 job. But at the same time, like most of my family members they graduated from college and they're not happy. So like I feel like like with me, being around people like Nico. Nico was like one of the very first people who I've been around who like was like really freelancing. And like back then, like I've always thought to myself, like, how the fuck is this nigga doing this shit? Like he don't have a job. He's just out here braving shit, doing like what he got to do to like get to where he's at. That's always been so fucking confusing to me. And I just feel like that seed in my head just came from from the times when I grew up, whether if it's in school, whether if it's around family. When you're so used to being around quote unquote traditional stuff, you start thinking of the most traditional way, as far as like making sure that you make the most you know easiest like decisions. Like I've always said, like um, in order to be successful, you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So like I feel like that long as you know find it in yourself to be comfortable with taking big risks or just being uncomfortable like in general, that's already going to break that cycle as far as you actually thinking for yourself for once.
Yeah.
Because like this how I look at it. For like me personally, I probably talk to like 2 or 3 people daily, and like my mom was just telling me this the other day. She was just like, everybody who always have something negative to say are the same people who don't even check in on you.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
like although like that's I guess when I first heard that and stuff like that kind of like hit like hit me in a certain way and stuff like based off what I said earlier, like um like depending on other people for my own success, like making sure that I get validation from people who don't really matter at the end of the day. So I just feel like long as you sit down, get to know yourself, not to sound corny, but really get to know yourself, really surround yourself around people who really love you no matter what, and like people who like really like accept you for like who you are, and
Yeah.
just go from there and just make every decision for yourself, no matter how uncomfortable it may be, no matter if it may even disappoint your parents. I feel like that we're all young, so like we can make mistakes.
Yeah.
Like the time to make mistakes is now, right? So how are you going to grow if
For
you
sure.
are afraid to make mistakes? So that's just how I
And
feel about
you're
that.
always gonna make them too. Like
Yeah,
you're always gonna make
100%.
mistakes no matter what. So I feel like, it's the fear. It's like the fear of making those mistakes, I think is worse than the mistakes. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because the fear, it will actually stop your progress. The fear will actually stop you from moving on and or moving forward or moving up. Because I know it's like, you know, I think because well, Josh, like the question was, it was like, do people feel that fear of failure, and does that kind of like lead them to like hesitate? And I think it does. I mean, I know it does. You know what I mean? I think I've
yeah,
experienced it a lot of different times. I think it's like the reason why, like you asked me like when my music came, like that shit should have came out, a long time ago. That's kind of why I just like uploaded it, like kind of on a whim, because I was just like, like this stuff was supposed to come out a long time ago, and I don't really want to keep putting myself in the in the position of like wondering what could happen if I put it out, because that's worse than just being like, even if I put it out and nobody ever listened to it, at least it wouldn't be because I didn't put it out or I was like too afraid to put it out. You know what I mean? At least I did it, and then it was like, you know, even somebody like yourself was like, yo, like I really like this and I want to like have a conversation with you about it. I'm like, that's amazing. You know what I mean? Because it's a lot of times where it's like, yeah, that fear of failure of like, even just for me going from like taking this sort of like progressively like more and more like harder stance into like being an artist as opposed to just being like writer and producer. um it's important to have those moments of like, yo, like, yeah, like I'm afraid of doing this because it's a different level, like it's a different version of this thing that I've gotten comfortable just being, you know in the studio, and that's where the process ends. It's like, no, like let's go beyond, like let's go a little farther. Let's, prepare to like do something a little bit bigger. And that's scary, you know what I mean? And I think it's just important to like, I can't remember who I heard say this, but I think it's kind of almost like a common saying, but it's like you like lean into the fear, right? You feel it, it makes you nervous, and then you acknowledge that it makes you nervous, and then you just do it anyway. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
but you got it, but you have to do it, you know? Um,
yeah,
but I
man.
think it's
Like,
also like we don't come up with the idea of like success very, I don't think we do a good job of doing that either in the process. It's always like this very like abstract, lofty kind of thing. I think there's a lot of, which is why I was talking about like the internet mentality, I think is a part of it too, because people see, the distance between, having like 1,000 followers on Instagram to having, 20 million. It's like it's just one song, it's one video, it's one, you know what I mean? It's like one thing that happens, and then you're there. And a lot of the people who I talk to who have this sort of like mindset, it's like I'll ask them the same question that you asked me. Is like, so what, like, what's the deal with like performing? They'll be like, well, I want to wait until I'll have a big show. You know what I mean? I want to wait until I can have like a huge show to have a show. It's like, I don't know if that's how it works.
yeah,
You know what I mean? I think you got to do like you got to do the hard shit that, you know what I mean, is you got to do what you don't want to do to be able to do what you want to do at the end. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's important. And not that you don't want to do it. It's like, have you seen that? It was like a video. I think it was Mike Tyson being on somebody's podcast being like, discipline is doing stuff that you hate to do, but doing it like you love to do it. You know what I mean? So even though it's like, no, it's not your perfect idea of, your debut concert. It's like, no, but it's important that you learn how to perform for 10 people before you step out in front of 500 people and realize you don't know what you're doing because you never tried. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Um,
Yeah, man.
oh
Like
yeah.
I just feel like time just doesn't wait for nobody. Basically,
Yeah.
you have to really just, like what you said, get up and just do it. Like I sound like that Nike commercial. Get up and just do it. But yeah, man. Like I definitely agree with you for real.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Very good. So getting into your project there, Nico, before I knew it. So you said these are some older songs. These are songs from 2017. Um, and so,
I think the oldest one is from 2017. And the most recent one was actually from last year,
okay.
but it's just the intro of the project is the only thing from last year.
Okay.
Is the only thing from 2021. And let me think. Track list. Track one. Okay, so track one is from 2021. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, all the rest of those are from 17, 18, and like the very beginning of 2019.
Okay. And
Yeah.
listening to the project, really, I think, yeah, across the board, great production on the
Thank you
project.
so much, man.
And I had another person listen to it as well, somebody I work with. Also,
Hmm.
comment on the same thing. Great production across the board and everything like that. So, how much time, do you spend on these songs, and then in terms of creating these songs?
I think most of those songs had two stages of creation. Like it's weird because a lot of my favorite things will be like an idea that I start and I'm like, I'm not sure how to finish this. And then like a bunch of time will go by. You know what I mean? Like a period of months, maybe a year will go by and it'll like come to me. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Um, and so it kind of depends. Like now I can make songs pretty quick and I can make stuff that I'm pretty happy with. But in a lot of ways, there's not really any defined amount to it. And I don't even know if there's like I don't even know if I could give you like a good average. You know
mm,
what I mean? Like it's really all over the place.
mm,
And especially because it's like I make so many things. Like I write a lot of songs, I make a lot of beats, I come up with like a lot of ideas, or I'm working on stuff with other people. Um, that the I don't know, like it's even something that I'm still trying to like learn as it's like kind of coming out of me is like sort of like the life cycle of these different kinds of things. I'm still trying to kind of wrap my head around it because like some of my favorite stuff that I have now that I've made in maybe like the last, like let's say since the beginning of quarantine, um, a lot of it's been like one sitting. You know what I mean? Like it'll happen in like one sitting. But
mm.
there's like another example of a song that I'm actually really happy with. Um, that it was kind of like the same thing. Like I came up with the idea in probably August or September of 2020, and then didn't finish until January, this past January.
Okay.
And that's not like a I'm constantly working on it for that whole. It's like start because I start a lot of things at one time. You know what I mean? I think I have ADHD. And so I'll start a lot of things at one time. You know what I mean? And then they'll they'll get where they get. You know what I mean? Sometimes it'll all come out in like one sitting, but if it doesn't, I make sure to keep those ideas around because if it's something that speaks to me, I know like now I know that the answer will come later. if it doesn't come right away, like I know that the answer for like completion will show up at some point. So it's I don't usually just like stop, and I won't get like frustrated and be like, fuck this, delete it. You know, like it's never that. It's like yeah, it's just kind of like give it time to breathe if it needs it. And a lot of time it could be, you know, but yeah, it could sometimes it could be like a year will pass, you know, between the idea and finished song, you know?
Yeah. I'm talking about some of my favorite songs on the project here. Get your insight on them.
Closer.
Yeah, what's your
That
fave? You
shit
gotta give me your
fire.
fave.
Yostin, you said Closer is your favorite?
That shit's fire.
Do you like that one?
I was just listening to that shit earlier. I was like, damn, that shit go crazy.
Oh my God, I'm glad. So,
Just
okay,
the
so
melody,
that was the 2017 one for sure.
just the melody on that bitch. Just yeah, that shit hard, bro.
Mm.
Thanks, man.
No
I'm glad you like that one.
For
problem.
me, I would go with well, first of all, like the album cover and the album title. The album cover, is that you and your father there?
That's me and my uncle. So my uncle passed. Um, so my family, I grew up with my mom's family. So I grew up mostly with like my grandparents, my uncle and his wife, and my mom. That was kind of like my unit, my family unit. But between my grandmother passed in at the end of 2015. My grandfather passed one like almost exactly 1 year after her, and then my uncle, who was their son, passed a couple months after my grandfather. So it was kind of like I lost a lot of that family unit, you know, all pretty close together, which is why in a lot of ways that like these songs are very important to me because I think they're like a manifestation of the grieving process.
Mm.
I think in a lot of ways. But that's my uncle. So that's me and my uncle when I was really little.
Mm.
And I'm trying to think. I have some like other similar pictures with the rest of my family members, but I don't know why I actually don't know why I picked that one. It just like I picked, you know, I just kind of like picked it. I was like, yeah, like this is it.
Mm.
And that it just kind of struck me as like
Yeah.
the one, you know?
And the title of the project, before I knew it, what's like the significance behind that title?
Um, I think I before I knew it, the idea was um initially the title was gonna be it was like and before I knew it dot dot dot, which was like a little too much. But it was like basically the idea of like, you know, like this kind of idea that like everything can kind of change very quickly, like before, like, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of like the saying, like, and before you know it,
Mm.
you know, like, and so that was kind of it, that it was like, oh yeah, like before I like really like before like, and it's crazy because like I said, you know, a lot of this stuff was like, you know, over the past like 6 years, and grief is like a very crazy thing to learn about because you're like I was sorry, I keep have the habit of like putting things into the second person. I'll stop doing that. I just noticed that it would be like my my like emotions and my like mentality stopped being lined up. You know what I mean? Like they just kind of stopped being aligned because on one hand I'm like kind of just like confused. It's a weird form of like displacement, you know, to be like that stuff kind of happened as soon as I moved to Chicago in 2016. Like that stuff was all going on. So I'm like trying to adapt to like a whole new life. You know what I mean already? It's like my first time like moving out of the house that I grew up in, and um, I'm trying to figure out all these like, you know, like new friend groups. I'm like getting really into like making music, and I'm starting to get like, you know, like really know what it's like to like get into like the music community and start to have like opportunities with like writing and producing for people. And but I'm also like I'm trying to keep that mentality as positive as possible. And the only way to do that is to like kind of ignore like the like pain and like kind of emptiness that's kind of like inflicting. And like that's a hard thing to go through. And it's only like now that I'm like really, I think, comfortably able to like be like, yeah, like that's kind of what happened to me. It was just like this. I noticed that it was like I was trying not to deal with it for a long time. And I think that's probably also a part of the reason why the music didn't come out as I was making it. You know what I mean? Because I think part of me was like trying not to deal with it, like trying not to feel the things that those songs are about. But it's like you can't really run from your feelings. You know what I mean? Like they're a part of you. They're literally like in your body and your head. So um
Can I ask you this? Like,
yeah.
so you mentioned ignoring your emotions. I feel like that's like a big trend with just men in general. Far as like, whenever we go through something, we just try to like escape it like as much as possible, whether if it's doing something creative, whether if it's going out with your friends or just basically fucking like around and shit. So like, what I
Yeah.
want to ask you is like how did you see yourself progress when it came to that, like over the few years and shit, like ever since you moved from Minnesota to Chicago, and um what would be your advice for like young men to like try to face their emotions and like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Does that make
totally.
sense? Yeah.
Um so I I think the process, well, here's the complicated part because I had one of the biggest opportunities of my pro of like my entire life, at least up to that point, right? Which was in 2017, I got flown to Toronto to like just be in the studio with Magic Jordan from OVO. So I was at the OVO studio, and I had never had any industry like literally like nothing. Like this was like my first thing, which was like huge. You know what I mean? Like that was like beyond what I had even like thought was possible. It was like really amazing, but it was happening kind of against the backdrop of all this other stuff going on where I was like, oh, like my family is like falling apart right now, you know, and um that was just difficult to deal with because it was like I think a lot of the process that was happening was that I was sort of actively trying to replace the parts of my family and like my old life that I was losing as I was losing them. But I was kind of like doing it with like these sort of like abstract figures in my life that were like people, you know what I mean? It was like I was looking for mentorship and I was looking for, people to kind of like what you were talking about, Yeltsin, like, somebody that like knew enough to be like, here, I'll show you what to do. Like, you don't have to worry too much. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just
Mm-hmm.
follow these steps. It'll be simple. So I think I had kind of locked myself into like the pattern of like, well, I can't talk to like the people who I would have, you know what I mean? Probably asked, a lot of this stuff or gone to for advice or even just gone through that process of reflection with. Um, and I think, I don't know, in terms of like dealing with that as like a young man, I mean, like, I don't know, like it made me very competitive. You know what I mean? Like, which in a way wasn't great for some of my personal relationships, but in terms of like the work ethic that I developed, like, yeah, it was really good for like I spent, you know what I mean? If I was short on my 10,000 hours when all that stuff happened, like any doubt of whether or not I passed that, in that time is gone completely. Like I definitely
Mm-hmm.
past that, and then probably then some. But it's hard because it's like, in a way, it's like, have to like develop that sort of like ability to kind of just like be fucked up for a little while, and grow and learn the abilities that you need to learn to be able to like heal and try to understand, and being able to grieve and do things like that is hard, and it's not, I don't know necessarily that everybody makes it out of that better than they went into it.
Mhm.
Like, it's taken a long time for me to even feel like I would ever get out of it better than I got into it. You know what I mean? It's like it's been most of my young adult life. You know what I mean? It's been most of my 20s has
Yeah.
been going through that. But I really have like learned and grown so much, and it's just like, I don't know. I think the only thing I could say is like, the only way to go through it is to go through it. You know what I mean? Um, but advice that I would give is just try to be as understanding of yourself and other people as possible. You know what I mean? And really, I think sort of eradicating the place of or like the habit of judgment, of passing judgment on other people, I think is big, because like there are going to be a lot of times where everybody is in a position to be judged. And if you believe in karma, which I think you'd probably be hard pressed not to believe in it, right? Is that you want to just have as good a sense of understanding as possible, and to be able to like, you know, just be just be conscious of a lot of things like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think here's something that I've learned, right, in going through this, is that a lot of the things that people like, the law of attraction is like kind of like an oversimplified way of looking at it. But whatever you're going through, you will inevitably like touch somebody else who's going through a version, not the exact same thing, but a version of what you're going through. And
Yeah.
like, you need to be able to look and see the reflection of yourself in it. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like
Right.
life will kind of like show you those things. Like, um, you know, look, you're dealing with this pain, or you're dealing with this situation, and let's say there's three total ways that you could go about it, right? That would be like significant choices. You got like three choices. And a lot of times you can look at the people around you and see what those choices are and where they'll take you. You know what I mean? Especially if you're in like a real tough spot. You'll, I think you'll see it. You know what I mean? And it's hard to say it on
Yeah.
it's hard to get more specific than that, but it's just like, when you're really going through it, I think the main thing in a lot of ways is like, yo, like really keep your eyes open at that point,
Yeah.
because you're going to start to see the different possibilities of, like that kind of turning point. Because I definitely saw people, in that path who had also lost people that were very important to them, but they let it really consume them and turn them into a version of them that I don't think they would want to be, before they went through that. And that's scary, because I don't know, who knows how close I was to doing that? Who knows like how permanent some of those choices and some of that like meant like developing those parts of your like mentality, that if that stuff's like permanent or lifelong, like that's a tough life to live, to be like really, just like really bitter or like really angry all the time, really resentful, like really, you know what I mean? Just really like that's a hard thing, I think. It's a hard thing to watch. It's a hard thing to even be near somebody who's like that. So I can only imagine that like really like being that is miserable.
One thing that I want to mention, like for me, back in 2016, like that, like I've always said that that year was such a tough year for me. Like I
Yeah.
lost people who I love and everything. That was the same year when I met you, obviously, and stuff. It was such a weird year, cause like when like for example, like when I lost one of my closest cousins. I think I told you about this. Like one of my closest cousins on New Year's got
Yeah.
shot and killed, and everything like that. Shit really like affected me like to the core, to the point where like like um, I would literally be stuck in my house for like months.
Yeah.
And I just let it, could like consume me so much to the point where like I didn't even think that I cried. It was such like a shocking,
Oh yeah.
type of moment for me to the point where like I couldn't even bring myself to cry about it. And I feel like part of that is because especially as a young black man, Josh would probably like relate to this, but we've always been told and stuff, to like get over shit. Even as a young kid, what you crying for? Why you doing this? Hold your head up. Like all that shit is cool to like say, but at the same time, like I just felt like that like that kind of just plant that seed in our head and shit. Like we're like we should never be in tune with our emotions, and I think because of that, that's why you see a lot of people going to the wrong path. Just like
Yeah.
what you said earlier, like about the law of attraction, you're gonna attract people like you're gonna attract yourself to like people that are similar to you.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, man, like 2016 was such a strange like experience for me because I remember when at that time, man, like I felt alone. The like older friends that I've had previously, like I didn't, like I felt like nobody wasn't there for me. And then it's like what made me respect you so much, and you don't even probably know this. Like I don't think I told you this before, but I remember one year for my birthday and stuff. Like I was so depressed. Like that was my 21st birthday. I was so depressed. That
Mhm.
was in 2016. Um, and like after my cousin, like I also had a couple other family members passed away too. So I was just out of that. That was my first time experiencing losing family. Like I
Yeah.
was just out of it. I remember you calling me, wish me happy birthday, asked me what am I doing, and like I was like nothing at all, bro. Like I'm just chilling. I just turned 21. My friends didn't even give a shit about my birthday and shit. So like I was just like, bro, I have nobody. And then she like you, and then she like you told me on the phone. You was like, bro, fuck that. Put on something. Yo had sent me some address. You had invited me over to this little kickback. Like I guess your friends were like barbecuing,
Oh
and then
yeah,
like you
yeah.
yeah, and then it's so
I do remember that.
y'all just showed me a good time, and like at that specific moment, like I was just I don't know, like that was my first time experiencing how love's like I'm supposed to be. Because
Yeah.
like with me growing up in the area that I grew up in, like it was always tough love. It was always tough
I
love.
feel you.
If you showed an ounce of your emotions, you was considered as soft. So like
Yeah.
at that time I didn't really know how to handle my emotions like that. So like having somebody like as kind as you to like show me the ropes of like this is how it's supposed to be. Like I just feel like, that gave me like a whole new perspective on life, just as a whole.
For
And
sure.
like, like I don't think I've ever told you that before, but like, yeah, man, like that really meant a lot. So I do want to thank you for that. And with all that being said, man, like I just feel like whoever's listening to this and shit, bro, like it's okay, dude. It's okay to like, feel like a piece of shit sometimes. Like we're human at the end of the day, and it's okay to feel what you want to feel. Like I feel like that a lot of people, especially black men grew up where like their feelings was always invalidated, whether if it's from like family, whether if it's from friends, um, and it makes you lose yourself.
Hmm.
So like, yeah, yeah, man. Like I just wanna, if like anyone's listening live, like I don't know, like I just you know want to tell y'all like, bro, like it's okay to feel what you want to feel, and like just make sure that you just start doing shit for yourself, no matter what,
Hmm.
no matter what,
For
because
real.
like that's like the biggest that's the biggest thing, man. That's like really like the
Yeah.
biggest thing, and it's hard to like do that. Like it's
Yeah.
really hard to do that, especially if you grew up in that type of environment that I'm describing. Like it's so hard to do that. So yeah,
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that. That's it.
No, that's valid. I think it's like balance too, in a way,
Yeah,
where it's like you kind of want a little bit of whatever you're not used to.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Because like I definitely I can definitely say like some like the balance I've had to strike was like I definitely needed some tough love. You know what I mean? Like that was definitely like,
absolutely.
well, let's and maybe that was like
Sometimes tough love can be too much though.
it can
Like
be
like
too, but
everybody should get tough love,
I meant
but
it in
like
terms of like
yeah,
as a response to like, you know, of sort of like a absence, of being like I'm trying to think. Um I don't know. I would almost say it's like a good example for like for maybe even just like kids that like don't grow up with like their dads in the house. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Where it's like there's like that kind of like it's hard for one person to like balance both sides of the spectrum where it's like, mom's supposed to basically like be like unconditional love, but then also, then she has to like switch over to like being, like kind of
mm,
also like this like fake father figure who's like also like very like on top of like being like disciplined and like all those things. And so a lot of times like you're not gonna have like as you like grow up and once you like get out of the house and everything, like you don't necessarily have the best internalized way of balancing those things. But I think just trying to like gauge wherever you're at and being like, yo, I need to move a little closer to like the middle of wherever I'm ending at. Because like I know when I moved to Chicago, um, I just started kind of like going wild. Like I was drinking a ton. I was doing a lot of drugs. I was partying a lot, and I was like, it was okay. I mean, I was working a ton too, so it was all right. But like that stuff was definitely like, no, like you gotta start to contain it. You know what I mean? You gotta start to give it
Right.
like a little bit more of like a rigid kind of form. It can't just be this chaotic all over the place kind of thing. Which I mean, it always is anyway. If you're creative, it's like your creativity kind of is that anyway, and you're trying to give it like form. But I definitely think, yeah, like even like, recently has been, well, because like me and Yelson have been talking, already about like, you know, just good ways of like maintaining, a sense of like discipline, and just being able to like
Hmm.
give yourself a little like the world is not that structured. You know what I mean? Like there is a lot of stuff kind of already in place, but like when you're a creative person, it's hard to like kind of just develop that. You know, you don't have the same thing that a person who, you know, gets a schedule from their 9 to 5 has, where it's like you have like these like tasks to do and they need to get done. You know, in this, it's like you got to like develop some type of
Schedule.
way of doing that. Right. And so it's like I feel like that's kind of a form of like tough love in a way. Is like, yeah, as much as you want to just, you know, have like this sort of like creative free time and like go over here and do this and come over here and do this and like, you know, you get it done when you get it done. It's like maybe, but maybe not. You know what I mean? Like maybe a little tough love would be like, hey, like no, like you need to do this shit right now. You know what I mean? Like you've been saying you were gonna do this for like I don't know how many months or weeks or whatever, right? It's like
Yeah,
time that you like sit down and like fucking do it. You know what I mean? Like you kind of just gotta be able to like impose it on yourself
Yeah.
in the right
absolutely.
way, you know, if you can. So
Yeah.
Can't be successful without being without being uncomfortable with being uncomfortable.
Mm.
You can't be successful if you're afraid to do that. So
yeah.
yeah,
Um. So get into, because you said you moved to Chicago from LA. Can you talk about a little bit about the differences as far as like being an artist, being a creative, going from LA to Chicago? What is the scene like being a Chicago artist as opposed to maybe being an LA artist?
So I actually grew up in Minnesota and I moved to Chicago 6 years ago, and I spent the time I spent in LA really was last year. I was in LA pretty much the entire year. But I will say the difference. Let me speak to the producer side first, because I think I have a better understanding of that I can articulate. Um, I think the main difference is the idea of learning the different kinds of networking, and how both places, at least from what I can see in like Chicago and Los Angeles, both places are. So here's okay. Let me start like this. In Chicago, there's a very talented community of artists. You know what I mean? There are a lot of very talented artists. There are a lot of very talented producers, singers, rappers, um, bands, instrumentalists, you know what I mean? Engineers, like, but there's not a lot of infrastructure. Um, in Los Angeles, it seems, and like I don't have LA all entirely figured out yet, but this is like kind of like my read after like a year. Like LA is a ton of infrastructure, but not a lot of community.
When you when you say infrastructure, could you elaborate on that? Like, what do you mean, like infrastructure?
There's record labels, there's production companies,
Okay.
there's I mean there are production companies and stuff like that in Chicago, but LA is built on those things. You know what I mean? Like LA
Right.
is built on these sort of like media sector conglomerates, and then there's sort of like subdivisions and then the companies. You know what I mean? That
Okay.
operate in these different things. So it's like
Gotcha.
all the
Gotcha.
movie, TV, and music companies have offices that you can pretty much just like go to out there. Like you can get meetings, you can meet the people who run all that stuff just out on your morning walk for the most part. If you really, you know what I mean? If you're lucky. Or you
Okay.
could see them at a restaurant, or you could see them, right? And it's not quite the same in Chicago, right? Where there isn't like Paramount Pictures Studios is here, and then like all of like, you know, the music facilities that are, you know, kind of adjacent to it. It's just not the same like that. So that's what I mean in terms of infrastructure.
Okay. Gotcha.
There's not a lot of entertainment infrastructure in Chicago. Like there are some things set up, like there's like CineSpace, which I don't even know if it's still open anymore because I haven't been there all the time, but I know that was kind of big because there's been a lot of they've shot a lot of TV shows in Chicago in the last like decade, right?
Yeah,
They've
there's like,
shot a decent amount of movies and TV shows here.
yeah.
Um, but at least for music, there's really not much in terms of record. Like, you know what I mean? There's like a couple super small indie labels. Um, but there's no Sony, there's no Interscope, there's no Atlantic Records, there's no, you know, I mean, the list goes on. It's like none of those, you know, they're
Hmm.
all in LA and they're in New York, but they're not really here.
Do you?
So there's community here though, which, so here's the difference. Okay, here's the difference. They're important for different things because community is what helps you really like be happy and have like a sense of like belonging, having like a sense, like, you know what I mean, having like
Hmm.
friendships, people who share your interests and stuff
Right.
like that. Los Angeles doesn't have as much of that sense of community, I don't think, but I do think that they have infrastructure, so you know the happiness maybe that people don't have in that sort of like sense of community, they can make up for it with money. And that's kind of the read that I get from it. And that might not be entirely accurate because I know that there are like the thing is like LA, and I think I said this to you, Yelson, and I definitely mean it. And I've said it to a couple people now. It's almost like become a thing that I go into. But LA and Hollywood are not the same thing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? LA is a broader like community. It's an actual city. And Hollywood is like a sort of is a culture within that. You know what I mean? Hollywood is like the few thousand people that work, you know, in
Yeah.
entertainment, and you know
It's
they create that culture that's sort of like it's a very magnetic thing, but it
Like
does
that
sort of
fake
like
life.
I wouldn't say fake lie, like it's definitely very real, you know, for a lot of people, but it's like it is it is like having a life where a very important part of that life is the perception of the life.
it's a
You know what I mean? So that's like
bubble
the way
type
that's how I,
But
experience. It's
that's what I mean though. Like far as like a
yeah.
fake life, like most Hollywood people, like they live based off of their image. And like whether if it's social media,
Hmm.
well, mainly social media, like honestly, like I was just looking at this documentary. Well, kind of like one of those YouTube little documentaries of I don't know if you guys heard of this little TikTok couple. His first name was Ali. I I don't know how to pronounce his last name,
is that the guy who
but
murdered his wife?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and like online, they gave this perception of like they live a happy life.
Oh, is it
Everything
the
is
couple
yay
that's
fine.
dancing? They said they never fight
Yeah,
or whatever. Okay,
yeah,
yeah, I
and
saw that. Somebody
then
told me about that.
you know like a year or so later after they're together, the husband kills the wife.
Hmm.
And basically what I mean by like fake life, people in Hollywood show you what they want you to see. Everybody want to everybody tries to come up with this perfect persona of like how they live their life. So you never really know what people are going through, like opposed to like the actual community,
Right.
which is
Well,
LA.
that's why I would say,
Yeah.
yeah, that's I would say that, you know, some of that is the big difference between like LA and Hollywood. Because I mean that's
Yeah.
the thing though too, right? Is like you'll if you go like you can tell the difference between people who are like born and raised in Los Angeles versus people who went there to get famous. And I'm not even saying
Mhm.
that people that like went there to get famous are like
Right.
bad or anything. It's just that you can tell the difference. There's this sort of like air of like hospitality that, you know, if they weren't, look, if they were practicing it wherever they were, you know, before they moved there, like it'll probably carry over. But if they're not, it becomes very obvious.
Hmm.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Um,
I agree.
And that might also just be because there's a lot of other people like that, and it starts to become like this sort of like non-personal kind of thing, this non-personal experience, which can be hard if you're like new somewhere. You know what I mean? You're a new person in a new city. You're looking for that personal connection, and so it's gonna be, you just want to make sure that you're not really looking in the wrong place. I got kind of lucky because the when I went last year, I actually was going um to work with somebody who I had already known for some years via like, he just like found me on SoundCloud, and he's like this amazingly talented producer and artist and writer. But we had already known each other for a long time. We'd already grown to have like an appreciation for each other's
Yeah.
like work. And we had kind of just started like building like a more genuine friendship about a year before me going out there. So it was good to at least just have something like that was sort of like a grounding experience. But I think if I would have just gone like totally by myself, you know what I mean, out, I think it would have been a whirl, like it was already kind of a whirlwind.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it would have just been um a little bit harder to feel grounded out there, especially because if you're in music, you know, most of your success is gonna, if you're, especially if you're not from LA and you're going to LA for music, you're going to Hollywood. You know what I mean? You're not going to just like LA, like the broader
Right.
LA. You're going, you know what I mean? You're going
Right.
specifically to like kind of throw yourself into the entertainment ring culture. And I don't know. So it's like one of those things. I'm like very grateful for the experience. I had a really good time. I was going through a pretty tough time when I was in Chicago anyway. So it was a really good, a well-timed, you know, like experience. Just kind of like go be somewhere like nice weather, work on music all day, every day. You know what I mean? Go just hang out on the beach for a little bit, go back to the studio, and got to meet some pretty cool people and met a lot of really talented people. And I made some pretty cool friends. So I think that's an important thing. And I definitely like, I wouldn't want anyone to be like jaded about a place that they haven't been to yet
Yeah.
because of experiences that they haven't had yet, that, you know, they should be able to like define for themselves and be able to like interpret themselves and be whatever. It's not an easy but like it's competitive, you know what I mean? It's a lot of people trying to make a lot of things happen. So it's like you just have to be, you know, be aware and be, you know, just diligent and just work hard too. Like I think that's going to be a main thing, right? Is like it's easy. Like there's always something going on. There's always an event. There's always a, you know what I mean? There's always places to go and people to see. You know, it's like a kind of like cliche thing, but it's like make sure that you're doing really like doing, you know, that you're working, that you're really working. You know, even if what you're doing is not necessarily glamorous at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
it's important to keep that work ethic really strong, you
Yeah.
know.
So you said, so going from Minnesota, which is, I don't know how the music scene is in Minnesota, if it's small or
Small,
small.
very small.
So someone who is going from such a small market like that, because you do have, because just as someone who is interested in film and television, things like that, you do have these other
Hmm.
areas now being popping up in the United States that aren't just
Yeah,
solely in LA. Because you have things like what Tyler Perry does in Atlanta, like he has
in
a whole.
Atlanta, yeah.
Anthony Mackie just announced he just opened his own, studio as well in New
Really.
Orleans. So, do you think you
So,
see these kind of little burgeoning kind of things pop up now for more film and television stuff outside of LA
hmm.
in the system, and then even some stuff here in Chicago, even some stuff in Austin? Do you see kind of things like that happening for music anywhere across the nation, like bigger kind of things, or where people can go for music other than LA?
So probably, I mean, yeah, I definitely do. But here's, okay. Right now, the music, I would say that the creative, well, it's different, right? Because like the for a long time, like LA and New York were like the capitals of entertainment. And in a lot of ways they still are, but in some ways they're not, because we're now that the sort of like technology has kind of flattened things more, you're able to see sort of the difference between um, financial infrastructure and like creativity. So you can see that it's like if you look at like a lot of the most influential stuff from the last 20 years of music, it really is like London, Chicago, Atlanta, and Toronto are probably four of the main exporters of like heavily culturally influenced music. But the financial centers are still New York and Los Angeles. You know what I mean? So it's like you can see that difference. And I mean, I don't even have to tell you who each of like the people are, you know,
Yeah.
from all of those places to be like, oh yeah, like that makes sense. Like that is where like a ton of like the most influential stuff does come out of. And it kind of has to funnel through there to get the money that it needs to like, you know, just like explode a little bit more. But I definitely do like I don't know if you know anything about like Nashville. Nashville is like a really big place for songwriters and producers. There's a lot of there's there is like some industry there. I could definitely see I could definitely see that though, like a lot more like smaller, almost like boutique kind of like studio setups happening. I think even what's happening in like Austin right now with like people like kind of flocking there, like a lot of like tech people are flocking to Austin. And you know, if tech goes, then the money will go, and where the money goes, the people will follow. So it's like who knows? I think people are trying to switch things up. You know, like lost like Hollywood's been Hollywood for like 100 years. You know what I mean? Like it kind of makes sense that there would be like this like now that there's sort of like an opportunity to kind of like move, you know what I mean? Like do something new, go somewhere new and do it, or like you know what I mean, not be restricted, that people would take it. And I don't know. I I I don't know. Kanye made a studio and a ranch and a church out in the middle of Wyoming. You know what I mean? Like with like thousands of acres, and like who knows what the next version of that is. Like I wouldn't be surprised if he popped up a film and TV studio over there. You know what I mean? And then so like there's one in Wyoming. Who's not to say that there's not one in, you know, North Dakota and then Minnesota and Wisconsin. It's like
Hmm.
I think it's definitely a possibility, but um I do think I'm excited to see what Atlanta does over the next few years, because it seems like they're growing really fast, and like this pandemic kind of like I don't know, it like did something. It almost like kind of like put some like like put like a little kerosene on like the fire of like whatever was, you know what I mean, kind of like going on. It seems like it kind of like got accelerated.
Hmm.
um but yeah, I mean definitely smaller cities need that though. You know, I think the smaller cities definitely could benefit. Like there are like look, some of the most talented people I know in the world, like in like really like most talented people that not that I've ever met in person, but that I've ever seen, period, are in Minnesota. Like you know what I mean? They're in like small playing small
I agree.
gigs and doing it's like you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like I don't know if like what they want is like a record deal and like stuff like that. But I don't even know if they would necessarily have the opportunity to get one if they don't leave, you know?
Hmm.
And so I think it's important to have the option, you
Yeah.
know. So hopefully that continues, that like people will go and be like, hey, like we need some infrastructure here. Can we build something? Can we set up, you know, can we move a branch of this over here? Like, you know, whatever.
Hmm.
You know.
Yeah. You speak about, you know, maybe some people in these small places maybe won record deals. What's kind of the main goal for you with just the music stuff? Is it just to music stuff just to sustain your life, or is it to maybe do a record deal? Is it do you want to stay independent? What's kind of the goal there?
I think the my main thing is that like I do all of the like sort of big like industry stuff that I want to do. I really want to do more as like a producer and a writer. Like there's artists who are way bigger than me who I would still like love to like produce and write for. But I think in terms of like my music, I don't right now I couldn't see myself entertaining any type of idea of anything that doesn't involve me owning all of my music outright. You know what I mean? Especially because I produce and I write all of it myself and also engineer all of it myself. Like, you know what I mean? It's like it's very like handcrafted to the point where it's like there's no I don't think there's any amount of money that could be like, oh yeah, you should hand over like lifetime ownership of this. It's like no, it's like anything that it's gonna be is gonna have to be like I maintain the ownership. But so even if that's a position where it's like, you know, I could sign to a label as a producer, right? And like do
Mm,
that work and be able to fund my own artistry off of whatever comes from that and still maintain independence as my own, you know what I mean, as my own artist, like singer songwriter. I think that's a cool idea. Um, but at the same time, it's like who knows? Like my mind's, you know, there's there's opportunity for things to change or for my mind to change. Like if it's the right deal, then it's the right deal. But I couldn't see something right now. I couldn't really like imagine it right now. I think it's just more like my goal is to, yeah, just make sure that I'm like firing on all cylinders. So that's like making sure that I'm in the studio, I'm producing for artists, writing for artists, working on my own stuff. Um, building up building up like the catalog so that I can like make sure that I'm doing as many different kinds of shows as possible. So, you know, different bills, like, you know, I have a lot of different kind of like sounds and stuff, even just in having like probably like what, like 20 something songs online. But it's like, you know, in a few situations where you're probably only doing like a 5 or 6 song set, that's kind of a lot of possibilities in terms of like, well, I could like you listen to the project, I could go do a rock bill. You know what I mean? Like I
mm,
could like go do like a rock set, or like if it's like something that's like a little bit more of like an alternative R&B thing, like I could go do that too. So it's like kind of like building it out from there just to be able to like, yeah, just to be able to, like I said, I think the way I put it was my favorite way of putting it was just firing on all cylinders. You know what I mean? Like
right,
as best as I possibly can. I think that's the only way, you know, because
right.
I love music. You know what I mean? I'm always making something. I'm always working on something, and like, um, it is hard to limit what I'm doing to just what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times I love like it can all like it's a lot of stuff that can just go in a lot of directions, which is in a lot of ways like why I'm you know, I've been looking for a manager for a long time and I've tried a few out, but I think I'm still really looking to find somebody who like really like gets me as like a creative person that, you know, like I make rock music, I make pop music, I make R&B, I make rap, I make alternative, like, you know what I mean? I can make like weird stuff. Like I, you know, I do so many things that it's like, I might have to just conceptualize it as like a team of people as opposed to like one person. Cause that's a lot that it's too much for me to handle by myself.
Mm,
So being like, hey, like you, one person deal with all this, it's like, it's probably too much for them too. You know what I mean?
bro.
So I'm probably gonna have to like think of like, damn, like, is there a way to break it up somehow.
Right. Right.
You know.
So speaking about, so I mean, you're doing this music stuff full time. You don't do like any other job. You're good enough to do this full time, the music stuff.
I actually did just pick up like an extra part time. I'm working at I'm actually working with CPS. I like work like I've been working with kids like for a long time, like just it's sort of like on and off, but like even like when I was like younger, like I was like a youth mentor and like I've had like these like various like things along like my whole life where I've like kind of been in like a position like that. So I actually just picked up a job at well, it's not really CPS. It's a company that works with CPS that facilitates an after school program. So it's like I go like spend, you know, a few hours a day with like kindergartners and first graders on the west side
Oh.
after school and just like have fun with them and like play tag and
Mm.
do homework and stuff like that. It's pretty cute. Like I used to be a camp counselor when I was at like the end of like my teenage years, so it kind of reminds me a lot of that.
Mm. Teaching them some
But
music and things like that.
no, so I mean it's really like it's really just like kind of like basic like no like just like have fun with them. Like
Mm.
you know what I mean? Like make sure they don't get in trouble or anything, but just like have fun with them, you know what I mean? They might want to like do homework or whatever, then like help them with their homework. It's kind of like it's like um yeah, I don't know. It's like kind of like a loosely defined job, but it's fun. It's definitely fun. Like I like dude, I love kids. I really do. I always have. And they like me too, which is good because I would feel weird if you know, I would feel weird if it was just like, dude, like these kids are like looking at you crazy, like they don't even like you. It's like no, it's like never ever been that. So I feel very blessed that whatever. I think it's maybe my inner child is still like alive. You know what I mean? Just from being like creative. Um, but yeah, that's the only other thing I'm doing besides music right now.
So would you describe
Um,
this project before I knew it as a? Would you describe it as rock alternative? Is that what you would describe it as?
Yeah, probably. I mean, the intro is like it's like a combination, right? It's like this, it's like it's rock and then it's like some R&B and it's like some pop and it's some alternative. Like yeah, it's like a little bit of everything, I guess kind of like woven into like one thing. But I did label it when I uploaded it, I labeled it rock though, you know,
Yeah.
because I did feel like Um, I think the main thing for me was that there, and it was kind of just as simple as like there's a lot of like real drums and electric guitar.
Mm.
Like that was kind of it in terms of like yeah, might as well. You know what I mean? I'll call it rock. Like
Yeah. I'm trying to
um,
think
but it
because
is
there was a song you did play the electric guitar on. I'm trying to think which song was that I really did enjoy it. Because I do really like I as I am. I do really like. I think that's really good. It feels very
oh,
personal.
thank you, man.
I do really like Closer, like Yosemite. I thought that was very good. Somebody You Loved, I thought was also very good as well. Do you have any like songs that you like have on here that you did absolutely loved, or is it a situation where you love them all? You can't really pick one that you love more than.
Those honestly, those are probably like those 7 songs are probably my favorite songs I've ever made.
Mm, okay.
Like 7 of my favorite songs that I've ever made. Like I've made a ton of songs, but those 7 are definitely all like literally like from the first one. Like, and it's funny because the first one is the most recent one. Um, but I do like I really really love that one, and all of those songs do have like a pretty special place in my heart as a creative as an artist. Um, I think my favorite. Do you want me to pick a favorite if I have to pick?
I mean, you
Pick a
can if you
favorite.
want to. Yeah, if you, yeah.
I think my favorite's got to be between As I Am and the outro One More Time.
Outro one
Um
more time slash survivor's guilt.
Survivor's Guilt, yeah.
Okay.
Um those two are probably my two of the favorite my favorite songs I've ever made, period, hands down, definitely. Like I really do I really those two really do have a special place in my heart, you
Mm.
know.
Could you like
Um
tell us why at all, or?
I think I just made them in, let's see, I think As I Am I made around my 23rd birthday. So that's the beginning of 2018. Um, and it was just I don't know. I think that's definitely a song where it was just like really vulnerable. It was just really, really vulnerable. And I mean, not to say that a lot of my music isn't vulnerable, because I think a lot of my music does have like a level of vulnerability to it. But I think that that one just kind of articulated it in like the most simple way, like literally like I wish that you could just take me as I am is like such a, you know what I mean? I think um and it kind of just were like, to me, I was like, sometimes when I write a song and it's like it's almost therapeutic in a sense where it's like, you know, the once you really plainly write out how you feel, it kind of becomes the catharsis of that feeling. You know what I'm saying? So it's like that's kind of what that was. And then um, one more time, I think is cool just because I like songs that don't have like a specific structure in a way. So it's like everything in that song only happens once. You know what I mean? Like for the most part, it's like the beat that it starts as does not come back once it changes, right? And that happens like three different times throughout the whole song. And I love doing stuff like that because it's like when I first started making when I first started making beats, I was just making like all these like crazy like electronic things with all these like wild transitions where it would just turn into like these different wild things. And this was like it was kind of like that process, but for something that was a lot more like emotionally what's the word? Emotionally gratifying, I guess I could say. But yeah, I think those two are like emotionally they're like the heaviest to me. Um
Mm.
and but yeah, those are some of the reasons why I really like each of those.
Mm. Okay. I guess one last question for you. So when you go out there, when you try to market yourself, what do you
Mhm.
usually do? Do you say like with your music, like I'm kind of like a little bit of a mix of this person plus this person? Do you avoid trying to compare yourself to other people because you go like, well, if I say I'm like this other person, then they're gonna instantly just think of their music when they're listening to my music, and so when you're going out there as an artist, how do you really market yourself there to people and explain your music to other people?
Well, I guess that's like the question that I'm still trying to figure out because I don't really know. Like, I don't know who to compare myself to. I don't know, I know what some of the things that I'm influenced by are, but I don't know. Um, it doesn't really make sense to compare myself to a lot of different things. I feel like a one-man band in so many ways where it's like, I don't know, and also because I get to the point where it's like, I don't really want to compare myself to anybody. I think somebody who I try to emulate in terms of like the ability to just be able to do all these different things would be like Prince. You know what I mean? Just because, I mean, like, one, he's from Minnesota, but two, also because, you know, he played everything. You know what I mean? He played all the instruments. He produced all of his own records. You know what I mean? For the most part. And so it's just like, I think, you know, being able to, like, just having the ability to do that. I'm not comparing myself to Prince, but I think to be able to be somebody like that, where it's like you really are so thoroughly engaged in the creative process that you can really do every single thing. You know what I mean? That you can really do every part and excel at it is like where I think it's a good place to aim, you know? And I think that's what I'm going to continue to strive for. But in terms of like marketing, like, it's hard to know because it's not like a genre. It's like, you know, I look at, you know, I think some people I'm like almost like jealous of because it seems like they have it easy in terms of like they do like one thing and like all they have to do is figure out how to like market that one thing. And it's like, that's not how I feel. So I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. You know what I mean? In terms of like, it's really just me. So I have to like maybe I don't know, like I'm just gonna have to like market it like honestly like yeah, like it's just a guy who does all this stuff. It's good, like you know what I mean. If people like it, they like it, but I don't know how much um I don't know how much you can necessarily attach to it other than it's just like me, you know what I mean? It's just my music. It's just that. Because if I try to say like it's rock, then it's like, but I have, you know, I have all these other songs that are definitely not rock. And then if you say it's R&B, it's like, well, I have all these other songs that are definitely not R&B. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
um, so I don't know. I mean, we're gonna see. I'm gonna continue. I'm gonna continue figuring it out. But that's all this is. This is always. Everything's a learning process. I'm in the process of figuring it out. The next thing I drop is not gonna sound even anything remotely like this. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, seeing though I'm so serious, like I could say, like it's gonna sound more like. Actually, it's gonna sound a little bit more like what I gave you for the show. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna be like it's not gonna sound anything like what any of this other stuff sounds like. It's gonna be different every time. So I don't know. I think somebody that I definitely want to think about though in terms of like how they did it is like I want to really like do the I've done it before, but I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna do the Kanye West deep dive. Right. Because like that's like a good example of like this is like just a guy who like is just doing all this like crazy like different shit and it's different every time and it's like it's really just like a guy making beats and singing like on his stuff. So it's like kind of like simplifying it down to that. I think is kind of the goal and like doing it in my own sort of like personal
I have a
fashion, you
couple of
know?
questions for you, Nico.
For me?
Yeah,
What's
yeah.
up?
I've known you for how long? Like 6 years now.
It's been six
Just
years.
about. You're like one
It'll
of the
be
most
seven
talented
before we
people,
know. Thank you.
right? You're like one of the most talented people who I've met. I'm just curious. Where do you personally see yourself in the next 5 years?
Where do I see myself in the next 5 years? Um, I see myself performing more for sure. I see myself doing. I definitely see myself more fully engaged in having visual representation very consistently. And I think the other thing that I'd like to add on to what I'm doing, I'd like to get into like getting into doing some type of like film aspect of something. So not necessarily just like it, or even if it's just like if it's like a an addition onto like music videos or something like that,
Hmm.
that's cool. Or if it's like something different, but I definitely um
Something like composing or
no. I mean yes, I would be down to do that too. I'm trying to honestly whatever way I can get into it, I would get into it. You know, I acted when I was a kid.
Hmm.
And I would love to like get back into doing it. And I know that there's a lot of opportunities for that to cross over, especially if you're doing really good work in music, that it's like, you know, there are plenty of places where those worlds kind of collide. But I definitely, you know, in over the next like 5 years, it's definitely I would really like to get a better idea of how to kind of get my foot in that door, like however that's possible. So if it is like say like maybe it is composing, like maybe that's the opportunity that kind of opens it up, like because I like writing, you know what I mean? I I like writing in terms of like anything. So I love songwriting, but like I love doing like creative writing or like sometimes I'll write. I've written like I have like a whole fake episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm is like on my laptop, like written, like you know what I mean?
right.
Like I had like little stuff like that, and so I just love being creative. So, but I've always loved film a lot. So by figuring out a way to get into that, either on acting or writing or composing, whatever, I just like to be a part of it, however is possible. So I'd like to have that figured out in the next 5 years. But
That'd
definitely
be sick.
definitely having a good regimen for like being able to just like go in front of people and play music and do you know cool shit and also have like I think good music videos. I think over time my music's getting more cinematic, so I think having like a
Mm.
having you know what I mean, having good visuals for it is important. But that might even you know the way that manifests might even be like you know by some crazy string of events, you know, this stuff gets one of these songs or two of these songs gets picked up for like a movie. Like I could see like As I Am being like, you know what I mean, in some teen romance movie or something, you know what I
Mm.
mean? Some, you know, some
Yeah.
Yeah.
stuff like that. So who knows? Like I think I'm like right now I'm coming out of a place where it was really hard for me to think ahead in terms of like anything clear about like what I wanted. So I think I'm trying to just kind of like guide it in like the direction that I want it to go and not put too heavy of a thing on it. I know that I want to keep adding to like the sort of like just like the discipline, just like the regimen, like not so much be
Yeah.
attached to like the outcomes of any of this stuff. I just know like, you know, I'd like to be working with um the people that I like working with as much as possible. I'd like to be working with some new people. I'd like to, I got my first plaque um, in like towards the end of 2020. So I'd like to have a couple more of those. Um, but I like to have some for my own stuff, not just stuff that I've produced and written for other people. Um,
Yeah.
5 years is a long time.
It is, but it's not.
It is, you're
Like,
right. It is, but it's not.
yeah, it's so
It's so
weird.
funny because I was writing out I was kind of writing this out earlier. I was doing this thing where I was trying to organize it based on like, what do you want to do? It was breaking it down from 6 months, 2 years, and then 5 years. But I was still on the 2 years part. But I just gave you the cloud of the
Yeah.
5 year version, right? And I'll kind of like
Right.
break it down a little bit more. But some of those are like the important things in there for sure.
Cool.
Did you have anything else, or is that it?
Oh, so far as any projects, or on anything, like, are you looking to drop anything soon? Like, whether if it's later
I
this year,
I definitely have some shit I really want to drop for the summer.
hmm
Um,
a single
I
or a project.
um a single, but it's definitely part of a project. And the whole
Okay.
thing is definitely like summer, like it need like it a lot of stuff should come out when it's warm, when it's sunny out,
Mm.
you know? Um, but I would definitely say like like with me it's funny because it's like a lot of this stuff if you go look at like my catalog that's online right now it's like it's a lot of the songs are like these sort of like sad love songs.
Mm.
um but a lot of the stuff that I've been making recently um is like this like very like kind of upbeat dancey cool like I don't really know how to describe it.
Hear this
um
song? Did you let me hear this song the last time when we were on Wicker Park? Are you talking
I
about that song?
I think so.
That's just
Yeah.
fire.
And
Yeah,
you were like, yo, this is different. Yeah, and it's different because
yeah.
and why I'm glad I did it is because it's like it definitely is like way different um for me to be doing it. And um and yeah, so I'm gonna try and figure out how I can get that out this summer. But that's what I want to do for sure.
That's cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sick.
It's very awesome. This was really great, man. Great conversation with you, man. I know I said 30 minutes, then it was 2 hours. I was way off on
Oh my
that.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
No, it's all good. I'm
yeah.
It's
glad
great though.
we got some good stuff
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Talked
Uh,
about everything.
uh,
Mental
Yeah,
health,
for real.
music.
Well, thank you so much for
Just
having me, man. It was awesome, and I'm glad we did this. And if you ever need like a last minute like film critic or anything like that to do it with you, you know.
oh, yeah. If you would be down, I'd love to have you on. Yeah, do it. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to let people know, like, where they can find your music, and your socials, things like that.
Oh yeah, for sure. You can follow me. Best place right now to follow me would just be on Instagram at Nicolas J Scott, Nicolas J Scott, Scott. And from there you can find all my music. It'll just be at the link in my bio. Will take you whether you got Spotify or SoundCloud or YouTube or Apple Music, whatever you want to use. You can get to all of it from there. Just be pretty simple, right?
All right. Yosin, you want to talk about your stuff? Where can people look you up, buy your clothing, everything like that?
absolutely. I have a website, fwptclothing.com. You guys can find me on my Instagram, Yelson Web Official. Yelson is spelled Yelsyn, WEBB Official. I'm looking to actually drop something within the next month or two. So stay on the lookout for that. And I'm on Twitter. I forgot my Twitter handle to be honest with you. Like I think it's just Yelson Web.
Do you
So
even
yeah,
use your
just
Twitter
search
anymore?
me. Just to
Barely,
look
right?
at it. Just to look at
Dang,
it.
barely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I see his
But
Twitter. He usually
yeah.
just tweets about like the Lakers losing. Usually just about that.
Oh yeah. Or like UFC stuff, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Super rare.
So let me
All
pull up.
right, man.
Yeah. Pull up his website real quick. For people, I should have wore your hoodie. I have your hoodie. There. I should have brought that on today, but I do have one of those. Yeah, black pullover hoodie sold out. Lots of stuff sold out here. Yeah, and you're doing a special deal, the $25 hoodies. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Um.
$25. And again, within the next month or two, I'm dropping some shit.
Uh.
For real, for real.
Oh
So
yeah.
I'm
eh,
excited for it.
Oh, and I got Nicholas, got your IG pulled up here. I'm also going to have it in the description in the video and everything like that. Also going to have that up there. Thank you. Thank you guys for
Amazing.
so much for
All
coming
right.
on.
Thank you, man. Have a
Really
good night. All
appreciate
right.
it. Have a good night. Thank you,
Thank you,
man.
guys.
Have a
Likewise,
good one.
man.
Thank you.
Peace.
Bye.
All right. That was a great interview. Great interview with Nicolas J. Scott there. All right. We're going to be heading out. I'm going to raid somebody. And that'll be it. Okay, let's see. Who can I raid real quick? Let's raid Tiger_Woods. He's playing Elden Ring right now. Tiger_Woods Gaming. He's playing Elden Ring. I'm going to raid him. And be off for the night. All right. Wow, 2-hour show. That's about as long. About as long as a regular show. Didn't expect the interview to go on that long, but it was really good. I really liked it. All right. All right, everybody. Take care and stay tuned. Make sure to check us out on all the socials: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all Afternoon Tune. Subscribe, comment to us on YouTube. YouTube at The Afternoon Tune. We're streaming on Twitch, twitch.tv/Afternoon Tune. Also, you can check us out. Send us an email, just theafternoontune@gmail.com with any questions, anything like that. We'll answer them on the show. And I'm sending you over to Tiger, Tiger_Woods_gaming. They're playing Elden Ring. So there we go. There we go.